Welcome to the session on social housing innovation. My name is Hannah Semze. I will be your moderator tonight, today, and then I'll. I think we have a wonderful line of speakers. In the meantime, I tell you that I'm a sociologist, and I've actually worked all my whole life on housing and urban development issues. So I will do a very brief introduction about the workshop structure. We will have 1 hour. And we have a fabulous lineup of speakers, three great ones. And with their help, we will both learn about innovative practices in the social housing sector, but also about the Commission's approach. So we have three presenters, Magdalena Ruskowska-Cieslak, who will talk about the social rental agencies in Poland, Anders Zabala Gomez, who will focus on the social civic housing cooperatives in Spain. So we will have these two innovative initiatives. And at the end, Agnese Papadia will actually focus on how the EU can help. I'll be here the bad guy to try to keep the time. So what we will have is that after each presentation, we will have a forum where you can ask presenters. Justina in the background is checking also your questions, and which I will do as well. Please absolutely feel free to use the chat function. And I'm not 100% sure, but Justina might help us whether you can raise your hand. But if it's a possibility, I will definitely use it. But the chat is definitely for sure there is an option. And we will keep the time. So at the end, if we have time at the end, then we can have actually questions also that focus on the three presentations. I will want to talk super briefly about this affordability crisis. And what I will say is based on Housing Europe State of Housing Seminal Report from 2023. The link is put there. Please absolutely go there and check it out. I think to tell you that some of the numbers, it's important to see that there is a crisis both in renting and buying. I think the increase in buying numbers has been in the value has been more shocking. What they say it's by the end of 2002, between 2010 and 2022, there was an increase of almost 50%. In the average of house prices in the EU territory. And I think there are two things what we need to keep in mind is one, that house price growth has consistently outpaced growth of incomes. And then in particular, a few countries, this increase has been actually much more substantial. I don't know by heart every country, but I definitely know for sure that in Hungary and Poland, this is the case. And that given that they are absolutely middle or lower income countries, it was actually their residents were more strongly affected. We also can see that there is this very particular post-pandemic environment. So there are certain things, there's increasingly unsustainable costs for construction, both construction and renovation. There's also an increasing cost of financing, and there's an increasing housing shortage. And if this is a deadly mix together, so if add it all up, then you have large population segments who struggle to find sustainable, affordable, and adequate housing. What we could see that residents in the social housing sector have been partially shielded from these effects. However, two things, it's importantly in many countries, it's a very limited sector. And even in those countries where it's larger, often municipalities and governments seem to have reached their capacity. So there is definitely room for other solutions. And this is what we will see sort of the use of sort of non-conventional solutions. This is what we'll learn a bit more about today as a way to somehow overcome the crisis. What we see also on the policy side is that there's a lot of word on energy transition and the importance of energy transition. And despite the best intentions, energy transition and housing affordability are often at odds with each other. this is something we need to talk about. On the policy side, what we have seen in a recent ESPON study, that there is, of course, so far EU has had no competence in housing, and that is probably what will be likely to change. But also comparisons are very difficult because there is no EU level definition about what's a social and what's affordable housing. There is actually an ESPON project, House for All, that's precisely focusing these things. And that as a result, affordability means very different. It means something very different from country to country. What we also saw that there is an increasing EU level intervention, Agnese will tell you a lot more about it than what I do, is that I think the main message from the president's latest speeches is there will be a European commissioner with the responsibility for housing and also for energy. And there is a decision to work on a European affordable housing plan, and probably state aid rules will be discussed for revision, and also a particular investment platform will be set up for affordable and sustainable housing. So what we can see here is that there are a lot of things happening at the same time. But time is a bit running out. So what we will do now is I will give the word to Magdalena Ruskowska-Cieslak, who is actually an expert in planning and managing innovative projects in the field of social housing and integration. And she has been involved with these things for over 20 years, and she has been very active on the NGO scene. And she has been advocating for the increasing access to both social and affordable housing as a key instrument in the social inclusion process. So Magda will tell you a lot more detail about the Polish experience. Please, absolutely, I will start looking at the chat box. Please use and ask questions. Magda, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just before I start, I will tell that my presentation will be mainly on my experience of launching and incubating a social rental agency in the Polish context, but also I will try to situate it into some new developments in other European countries, so that we can have a comparison and a bit broader context. I was asked to talk about social rental agencies as an innovative tool, but in fact it is not innovative at all in several countries. It has as a tool more than 40 years now in Belgium, 20 plus in France and in UK. But it is rediscovered again in the context of affordability challenges in Europe, and also in Central and Eastern European countries, where the social housing plays a little role and is a very small part of the housing market. So very briefly, for those who are not familiar with the social rental agencies concept, SRA is a tool that allows the operator, the municipal company, entity, or NGO to be a mediator or between people in need of affordable housing options and the private rental offers. So it's a mediator looking for affordable housing offer and housing units outside of the traditionally municipal housing stock. In Poland, the target group that is the most preferred for the SRAs are tenants from the rental gap, means from about 35% of Polish population. that earns a bit too much to qualify for very challenging thresholds to apply for municipal or social housing, or subsidized housing, and whose income is not enough to afford the offer on the market, renting or buying a property. So low income, but also it can serve, and we have experiences for several years now, that this additional housing stock in the disposition of municipality can also serve to people on who are on waiting list for municipal rent. Means that they are in some difficult life situation, but still need to wait for allocation of a flat from municipal stock. Also, those people targeted by social rental agencies activities are those who are inadequately housed, very often living in overcrowded spaces. This is by definition what the SRA offer can match the most. But we also see that more and more the vulnerable groups, vulnerable for social exclusion, can benefit from the activity of social rental agencies, being a mediator that allows to get down the barriers for migrants, for single parents, for people living in institutional settings, going out of homelessness, living in shelters, and being there only because there is no option or exit strategy from them to leave the institution. We see also more and more employees of socially useful profile that are indicated by municipalities as those who would be preferred client for social rental agencies in the 12 social rental agencies that are set since 2021 in Poland. So socially useful profile means for smaller cities where there is a need of teachers, nurses, doctors, social assistants, people who are very important for the local community, but still to retain them or to have them in the community means that they need to an offer of affordable rent. In the larger context, as I said, and historically, ways out of homelessness were at the origin of launching social rental agencies in Belgium, France. But we see also recently emerging social rental agencies in Greece, in Saloniki, to serve people going out of homelessness crisis. But also, I found the very good example of an NGO running social agency in Slovakia, also for people in homelessness crisis. So other countries more and more set municipalities in those countries, like in Prague or in Poland or in UK, target mainly low-income families or households, or the people living in conditions that are not adequate to their needs. As for financial model of this type of activity, importance is put mainly on multi-year cooperation agreements between a social rental agency and municipality, that is the main provider of affordable housing in local communities. Multi-year cooperation agreement stabilizes the system, of course, and also offers longer-term accommodation perspective for the tenants. There is no one source of income for social rental agencies. Usually it's a financial patchwork of different types of source of funding. First of all, to finance the main activity of such an operator, but also to provide additional assistance services to the tenants that can be individually tailored to the needs. And also very important is that in some countries there are tax exemptions for property owners that are the space for negotiation of the rent rate. A landlord who is offering for lease his apartment to the social rental agency can benefit from tax exemptions, and normally it's 10 or 15, 12, 20%. Then sometimes in the budget of social rental agencies, we see also property management fees, rent subsidies for tenants, very important. If a social rental agency works on in a big city or in bigger metropolis where the negotiation of price for SRA is challenging, then still affordability can be reached by associating, allowing social rent subsidies to tenants. Also, an element that seems to play an important role for development and scaling up of activity of social rental agency that we've seen in Poland is the association of permanent system funding for renovating empty stock, empty flats, empty spaces, or adapting premises for housing purposes to be used by SRAs in Poland, and for that SRAs can use in Poland the subsidy fund, which is the government fund to develop social housing. Also important in this patchwork, financial patchwork, is funding for social services. So the services that additionally can be provided to the clients depending on the need and depending also on the with the intensity that is adapted to the need of a tenant. Meaning, for example, for migrants, for people who are foreigners in a country, the most important and most intense social assistance would be at the very beginning to reach the adequate housing, and then to assist with social integration. Then, of course, step by step, the assistant can be less intense or stopped depending on the needs. The same for example, young people who are also having the challenges to set in autonomous life. Also, those first steps are important, and some of subsidies are dedicated especially for groups of people under age of 30 years. And then the question of that may be asked is whether the element of social work in SRA context allows such structures to be sustainable. And we see that by example of France or Belgium or UK that it is, because they are this activity is run for decades there. And for this question appears especially in Poland and in Central European countries, because here it's still a discovery, and it's a very new approach for municipalities to tap into the private housing stock to to enlarge or somehow increase the offer of housing for different groups of people served by municipalities. So this social element needs, of course, this diversified sources of funding, and that's why we also very much looking to the presentation of Mrs. Papadia at the end, because we see that that there are some funds that are available, and there are some already some paths towards different types of funding, but also, which is what is important is that the property portfolio can be built by a municipality very quickly and at low investment cost for municipality, which is important, especially in times of crisis. We have seen in Warsaw, for example, when in 2022 there were municipalities who hosted a wave of refugees from the territory of Ukraine that were faced with urgent need to provide different types of accommodation and housing. And it seems that tragically, the SRAs were one of the response for this crisis, and are still developed for such emergency situations. Also, very important for sustainability. My last slide would be just to see the concept from three agents' perspective, from the tenant perspective, municipality, and landlord. I hope the presentation also will be available to the participants after the presentation. So as you can see, from tenants, very important is access to housing, rent subsidies available, and additional assistance that can be used for individual challenges, and different types of solutions to pay the deposit at the beginning, at the entry of the rent contract. Then for municipality, as I said, very flexible eligibility criteria. So this solution can be applied for very vulnerable groups, but also just for low-income families, or, as I said, special types of professions needed in the local community. Very important to say that also it can play an important role for the institutionalization progress. From the landlord perspective, which needs to be, the offer needs to be attractive for the landlord perspective, the long-term lease agreement and the fact that there is an institutional mediator in the process is a very interesting offer for landlords, as it lowers the risk of renting on the open market, and so with contact with individual clients. Also, what we see is that the offer of long-term lease or rent can provide to landlords stable income, no rent arrears, and the tax exemption in income, which is not negligible. So hopefully I tried to explain a bit the concept, and looking very much forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Magda. It was super interesting. So far, I have not seen questions, but there's something. So please, just again, as Justina is telling everyone, please feel encouraged to send us questions. There's one thing I wanted to comment on, because I think what was very, among other things, Magda's presentation really highlighted that innovation, what we treasure so much, is also super place-based. I mean, it might be social rental agencies might be a well-known practice, in Belgium and many other countries, but it's definitely a novelty and innovation in many Central and Eastern European countries, and it has really, it brings great achievements. What I wanted to ask as a follow-up from Magda, just very shortly, that regards sustainability. So one of the keys is that, and that because you have also dwelled on this fact that it's actually difficult and you need a lot of funding for that. And I was wondering, how do you see, to what extent social interagencies can operate without possible funding from the national or local governments, but them enabling them through a regulatory framework, or that's unfeasible?
This is what I said about the social element in it. I think this social element and providing social assistance services that are free, of course, for the tenant would be, of course, impossible in most of the cases, especially for scaling up such as an activity.
Yes.
That is clear that for that we need to not to do the homework for local authorities and local services, social assistance services, but then it can be used very effectively and in synergy of with other expertise that especially social when social rental a social rental agency is run by a non-governmental organization. This synergy of different expertise that an NGO brings to the table is important to somehow prove that sustainability also can be guaranteed by the fact that an operator is a kind of broker of different services that exist already and have their own funding, but just are not in the same place, like one-stop shop for a client. So this is the first part of my response. And the second, we see very interesting development in Poland, trying to create an insurance that a social rental agency can use, insurance on non-paid rent, for example, that is developed by one of the bigger companies, insurance companies, for different types of rent, including social rental agencies that are working in the rent on the rent market. That seemed to be an offer on based on economic rules. That is one of the low risk factors that lowers the risk of financial troubles of social rental agency. But the base would be still the cooperation of municipality and municipality's decision of using such tool to serve the local community.
That was a super interesting answer. And one last super quick follow-up question. Do you see any risk in the fact that the social rental agency is often not run by the municipality, but by an NGO?
The risk, you mean
risk
capacity?
Yes, the risk of, that might be a very Hungarian perspective now, where our NGOs are really they are in a very unstable situation. So do you see any risk, maybe in Poland or generally, that NGOs are less stable than municipalities in case they run a social rental agency?
A cooperation set based on contract that is a long-term 5-year contract requires some trust and some stability of partner that is chosen by a municipality. But in fact, this question I heard last week, for example, from a decision maker, exactly the same, whether I see in Poland enough of NGOs strong enough to launch themselves in such activity. And my question is, if my answer is, when the cooperation is good and a trust is there, I think the synergy creates enough of stability for such activity to be run for a long time.
Okay, thank you so much, Magda, and thanks for this incredible presentation. I really recommend everyone, I think you will receive the PPT. Please go through that because I think there's a lot of information. Now I pass the word to Ander Zabala Gomez. who will provide us with insight to a very different experience. He is actually a worker member of Sostre Civic Cooperative, where he has been more than 3 years in the economic and financial department, and he's also an engaged and active member of the Fiara Banca Etica, which is the only ethical bank in Spain. And among others, he participates in the movement in Barcelona for the right to housing. And Ander will tell us about the cooperative experience in Spain. So the word is yours, Ander.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for the introduction. And we are an organization that was born in 2004 that made basically cultural dissemination and exploring the possibility of creating the cooperative housing alternative to both the rental market and the home ownership market. And we were inspired by the Uruguayan FUCBAM and also from the Danish cooperatives, among many others. In Europe, there are plenty of them. And in 2014, our first project began, and in 2018, the first dwellers entered to the dwellings managed by Sostre Civic, and now we are more than 1,300 members. Out of them, about 200 are already living in Sostre Civic homes, because not all of our members have been assigned a dwelling. We have in Sostre Civic two main activity lines. On the one side, the development of housing, but on the other side, there is the political advocacy that the collective ownership and the right to use the dwellings model is viable, is possible, that is sustainable as well, environmental wise, and that managed through a not-for-profit cooperative like us can compete and can also compete with the private actors in the that provide affordable housing, but also complement the public policies, the public housing policies. We understand ourselves as one more way in the right to housing and looking to secure affordable dwellings in Catalonia. In this sense, in the past 6 years, we have developed more than 200 dwellings through different ways that we will now explore. But above all, the most interesting part of Sostre Civic is that it incorporates different projects within the same legal organization. And this permits us to give support to different projects, but at the same time, replicate the model and accumulate expertise in comparison to those individual cooperatives that they restrict their activity to their own building. There are 3 different membership types in Sostre Civic: those that are already living, and those that are supporting the model. And this is why the model of collective ownership is guaranteed, because more people decide over who can over the decision to sell or buy the dwellings. This guarantees that the dwellers themselves won't decide in 20 years to sell back the asset, but that the whole assembly, including those members that are not part of the project, will obviously vote against the selling back of the asset. And also the fact that we are a private entity guarantees the fluctuations in the political side to privatize the housing stock. So these public community partnerships we believe are one more way in the right to housing. In this sense, it's also worth to mention that each project is independent economically. So if one project fails or any accident or crisis happens, won't affect the rest of them. So economic-wise, they act as independent companies. They issue their own invoices, for instance, and they sign their own loans, credit loans, but they receive the support of the whole umbrella organization. So this is a balance in which there are 2 levels of governance: the one of the project, which has is completely autonomous in the aspects that affect them, except for the ownership, and the selling back of the assets, and also the environmental criteria that apply to also specific projects. We are in Catalonia 42% of the sector, which is quite small in the moment, but we are growing rapidly. And here you can see a quick overview of the forecast in the future dwellings managed by us. And this leads to me to explain how a housing project is developed. First, we need the group. In fact, it's the group that self-develop the dwellings, either acquiring an already constructed building or constructing ourselves the building. And the technical team, which I belong to, we support the group in the process, but it's the group that takes the lead and puts the energy during the process. Then the land or asset acquisition, we have two main lines, either land leases from the public administrations, or we buy private land with the help of the Catalan Public Bank, which they play a key role. Then the project definition, where it's a participatory process, where the future dwellers will decide how the community spaces or the private spaces will be. To access the financing, which we mainly rely on ethical banks and public banks, because the traditional financial sector is reluctant to finance collective mortgages, which in fact are much more secure than an individual mortgage, because you have the security of the whole group complying with the obligations, and eventually the construction, which for that part, we have created our own not-for-profit ethical and sustainable construction company, La Constructiva, and has developed so far the tallest timber building in Spain, 7th floor, which we can see in the picture, and with very pioneering techniques that we have explored, and it was the second construction that we have developed as back at that time. Now we have developed more. So this also explains by itself our capacity to be in the our capacity to develop dwellings in a very efficient way. And now I would like to move a bit more into detail in what's the relationship of the tenants, or not tenants exactly, it's members, the members that have with the cooperative. Because Sostre Civic's main principles are the collective ownership of the dwellings, the indefinite lease or right to use the dwellings. If you want, you can live it the whole life in the project, and the not-for-profit characteristic. So the members pay an initial contribution in the form of share capital to contribute to the financing. We will later see how it's the finance mix of project, and also pay the monthly fee to the project, which includes all the costs of development. We develop projects cost-based, with the help of subsidies coming either from the Next Generation program or state or Catalan grants to develop affordable housing, the same as it would receive a private developer, not more, not less. And then the project pays to the general cooperative, to the umbrella organization, some fees for the management, either of the development phase or of the co-living phase, once the dwellers are already living. And there are also members that do not belong to the project, that also members to the cooperative, and can decide over the general aspect of the model, and that guarantee the long-term and the permanent affordability of the dwellings. Regarding the financial mechanisms that we have, on the one hand, we would have the loans, the credit loans to develop the construction or to acquire the asset, that the private ones are only ethical finances, because the rest of the actors so far are reluctant. But we also rely on the public banks, both at the Catalan, at the Spanish, and at the European level. And it's worth to mention that the Council of Europe Development Bank has signed an agreement with us for 31 million euros, and that we are now going to develop 300 dwellings with the help of this financing. And apart from the main loan agreement, we have the initial contribution paid by members, which is returned to the members when they leave, and the range of it's between 3,000 euros to 25,000, and the average it's 15,000 euros of initial contribution for a dwelling that will last for the entire life. We have to keep in mind that this is a stable model, stable and affordable long-term model. So the only thing that can be compared to this stability is the acquisition of a dwelling, the home ownership, and the initial contribution to access it in Barcelona is 6 or 7 times that price. Then we have participatory bonds, or we issue debt per project in case it's very expensive in order to reduce the share capital. And we have other mechanisms such as guarantees and collaterals from the municipalities, or donations and state grants, as mentioned previously. Here you can see the banking pool and the key role that the Catalan Finance Institute in the left plays, and the Spanish Public Bank, the ICO, but also the ethical finances. And to this should be added the loan that the Council of Europe Development Bank signed recently with us. And here we can see a typical mix of a project where we have the own resources that have been put by the members. In this case, this was one of the very first projects, and the initial contribution was very expensive, but between 30 and 40,000. But this is not the norm, and this was very particular for the fact that it was one of the first. And then the participatory bonds, despite being modest contribution, definitely help in the individual level and in the family level. And the monthly fee, it's more than twice cheaper than the dwellings of much less quality that are around the neighborhood where it's located, and with very high energy efficiency standards, which reduce the energy consumption also in the individual level. And one question that I was required to ask was where the members get the money for this initial contribution, and this is exclusively from their work, the savings that people has done over the years, or the savings that the parents of some young people may have done, can serve to pay this initial investment, which in case you leave the project at some point for whatever reason, that you will be refunded. So it's not it's secured somehow. It's a kind of saving in the form of housing, and it's not remunerated. This is also important. We don't pay interest for this capital. And this is all. I remain at your disposal for the questions that there might be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was very, very interesting. And again, the same with Magda's slides. I think it's worth for everyone to look at them detailed. Again, I don't yet see questions, but don't take it as a critique. I think everyone was amazed. It just sometimes people are afraid to ask. I would like to know one small thing, and then I pass the word on to Agnese, is that how do you, I found it very interesting that you mentioned that you saw yourself as part of this matrix of providing affordable homes, let's say in Barcelona or Catalonia, or in Spain, however you want to form it. Who is your exact target group in this matrix, and how do they relate to the other, I don't know, other target groups?
Taking into account that Spain has 2% of social housing in stock compared to the 15% on average in the European level, more or less, I will say exact numbers. Our target are all those people that live in the private rental market, which is about 20% of the population, that it is excluded from the mortgage market, that will never access credit from banks, but that still have capacity to accumulate some small savings. It's an alternative to all those tenants that never consider they can access financing from a bank, and that will never inherit a dwelling. And also, yes, the taking into account that this part of the population is the one that has the lowest income.
Yeah.
So this is the low income families. Our social base is mainly people that earn between 1,000 and 2,000 euros a month, in this range.
Thank you. And I find this target group specifically important because we tend to forget about them. I mean, we always tend to concentrate on the most vulnerable and yet forget those who are also vulnerable and need help. But there seems to be a lack of state capacity to really help them. Thank you so much, Ander. Now I pass the word to Agnese Papadia, who is actually the deputy head of the unit in charge of housing in the Directorate General for Employment, Social Affairs, and Inclusion of the European Inclusion at the European Commission. And she also works to promote social economy, microfinance, and access to finance for social organizations. And what she will talk about today is really give us the European perspective, what tools and financing are available for such innovations that Magda and Ander have already described.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. And thanks to Magda and Ander for the presentations. Indeed, they were very inspiring. So thank you very much for that. So, well, as Anna mentioned at the beginning, housing is not your competence. That's true. Of course, this is mostly in the hands of the national authorities, the local authorities. But on the other hand, we have at European level a lot of tools and instruments, and especially funding that can support housing. So this is what I'm gonna speak today, just give you a brief overview of especially on the funding part that I think is particularly important when you want to promote innovation, because what we see that sometimes EU funding can kickstart innovative projects in member states and then taken over by the national or the local authorities. So it's really a way to innovate and to experiment new things. So I will start just with overview of all the funding that is available for housing at European level. So the main message is that there are many funds at EU level that can promote social and affordable housing, but they are a bit fragmented. So, and sometimes it's difficult to understand what is the right fund to finance what. And this is why at the beginning of this year, we have published a toolkit on EU funding for social and affordable housing that provides a complete overview of all the funding available for both social and affordable housing, and also includes 20 good practices of how these funds were used concretely on the ground in different countries, cities. So it's really, you know, a manual that can help navigate this complexity of EU funds. And then at the end of the toolkit, there is also one annex that are country fishes. So for each country, you will see what funds are available under different funds, especially the Recovery and Resilience Facility, European Regional Development Fund, the European Social Fund Plus. So I really recommend, I think the link will be shared in the chat, or I can do it later. So I really recommend to look at this publication. So what do we have? So as you see, we have 4 main funds. 3 already existing and 1 that is in the making that can support housing, and the link between social and affordable housing and energy efficiency, energy renovation. So we have on one side the Recovery and Resilience Facility. This is the funding that was put in place after COVID, where each member state has developed a plan and together with the Commission with different investments and reforms. And under this facility, there are 21.3 billion that are dedicated to social housing, together with other social infrastructure. But there is also money available for affordable housing. It's just that it's more difficult to capture, so it's not present here. And what is interesting under this facility is that it connects funding with reforms. So member states, so the EU countries can propose investment and reforms together. So this means that it has a strong transformative power in the way member states and EU countries work on housing. And then the second biggest fund that we have is the cohesion policy funds. Here we have around 10 billion of investments in housing, but this is mostly for energy efficiency measures, but still are very important because first of all, they can decrease the cost of how much people spend on energy bills, but also it can help putting on the market part of the housing stock that is not on the market because it's not of good quality enough. So I think that's also, you know, an important element that can contribute to housing affordability. And then we have 1.5 billion for direct investment in social housing as part of, you know, broader social inclusion strategies. Then we have the InvestEU program. What you need to know about the InvestEU program is that the money you see here, it's not the final amount of money that is available. This is the guarantee that is given from the EU budget to mobilize additional investments, both public and private. And it means that for each euro, more or less, that we have from the EU guarantee, we can mobilize up to 15 euros of investments. So the amount that you see here is only what the EU put as a guarantee, but then private investors, public investors come in and put their own resources that are guaranteed by the EU budget. So it means that the amount actually available is much bigger. And here we have two priorities that can contribute to housing. So we have the social investment and skills window under this program, which is 2.8 billion. It's not only about housing, so it's also about microfinance, social finance, but also affordable housing and social housing. And then we have 9.9 billion for sustainable infrastructure. So more, you know, energy efficiency renovations. So, and this is implemented by implementing partners that are national promotional banks, that are the Council of Europe Bank, who is very strong player in the field of social housing, for example, the European Investment Bank. So it's directly these financial institutions that, thanks to the EU guarantee, can invest in social and affordable housing. And then we have the Future Social Climate Fund that will start in 2026, who will help vulnerable households in energy efficiency renovations, including for social housing. So these are the big funds that are dedicated mainly to either infrastructures or energy efficiency. But then we have many other funds that can still facilitate either the access to housing, can facilitate innovation in housing, or can also facilitate an integrated approach, something that we heard already from Magda this morning, sorry. So the importance of providing also services, social services, and other kind of services. And for example, the European Social Fund Plus can help provide this integrated approach where housing is linked to social services, employment services, and also what the European Social Fund can do, and you see interesting examples of that in the toolkit I mentioned, is also to facilitate access for specific groups, Roma or migrants, so people who face the biggest difficulties in accessing housing. Then we have Horizon Europe, that is the research program of the EU, and there it's also a lot about innovation because it can really help, you know, innovate, identify innovative practices, provide the basis of research that can help policymakers to put in place innovative approaches. And then you have other funds, more specific, like the technical support instrument is an instrument that supports reforms in EU countries, and it is also supporting reforms in the area of housing. The Single Market Program is financing a specific activity, a specific initiative, which is called the Affordable Housing Initiative, that is trying to bring together different actors to build partnerships, including, for example, the social economy. We heard also about cooperatives, so bring together all of this and all the housing providers, local authorities, all together to provide more affordable housing and also to make sure that renovation of social housing stock or affordable housing also are done in a way that promotes affordability. And then last but not least, we have the Asylum Migration Integration Fund that, of course, is very specific. It targets only migrants, but still it has also a priority on helping migrants to access housing. So as you can see, there is a lot out there already now. So until the end of this financing period in the EU that runs until 2027. But then, as Anna mentioned at the beginning, so maybe I can stop sharing. As Anna mentioned at the beginning, there is also much more attention to the topic of housing under the new commission that is going to start very soon. There will be a commissioner which will have a dedicated responsibility for housing together with energy. And there are many actions in the pipeline on the topic of housing. Indeed, Hannah mentioned some of them: a new plan for European affordable housing plan, a new pan-European investment platform for affordable sustainable housing. There is the idea to revise state aid rules to allow more support for affordable and energy efficiency housing. The Commission will also work with member states to double the money that is available under cohesion policy funds. You remember in the slide I mentioned this is one of the big pots that can support housing. And also so each commission received what we call a mission letter with objectives for the work, and the one on housing and energy also received the task to look into short-term rentals and how they impact housing affordability. So all of this will be done in the next years in the Commission. So I think we have ahead of us much more possibilities to work on housing also at the European level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agnès. It was very interesting, and I think it was also a bit reassuring, you know, what might come. I know we are running out of time, and some people might be leaving, but I would still love to ask one very small question from you, and that's because on the one hand, I was really amazed about the different on the availability of different EU sources, and I think EU is really doing its best. The impression was that, however, they are mostly actually for nation states to access, which is, I think, totally okay. So the question would be, if an organization like Anders that is a bit less established, because now they already have access to funding, but in another country working with the same aims, is there a funding source they could rely on because it's my experience is that for these initiatives to start, unless there is a guarantee behind, typically national or municipal, it's very hard, although they seem to do a very good job. So is there a plan or already funding available on EU level that could actually facilitate them?
Well, I mean, all the money I mentioned, yes, it's for member states. I mean, not only national authorities, sometimes also regional. But then, of course, in many cases, they work also with other organizations, with the civil society organizations, or with the social economy organizations. So it's not that. So under the money that is managed by member states, which is the biggest part of EU money. Still, I mean, there are, for example, call for proposals that are launched by the national regional authorities. So it's not, I mean, that they do it by themselves, all of that. So this is something important to say. And then something else, I mean, that if we talk about, for example, a small organization or a social enterprise, for example, or a social impact organization. I mean, we have under InvestEU, we also finance this kind of organizations. So we actually finance intermediaries and help them to finance this kind of organizations. They don't have exactly what we do. We provide a guarantee so they can go for this kind of more risky investments and invest into smaller social enterprises, social organizations that normally would not receive credit, for example, by a bank, but still through the guarantee that we give under InvestEU, it is possible. So this is an opportunity that there is for, yes, smaller organizations that would not have access, for example, to loans or to other kind of support otherwise.
Thank you so much. That was a very good and extensive answer. I think we actually have a receding number of participants now, so we do need to close. I really, really enjoyed it. And I can promise all the participants, I don't know exactly how, but through Justina, you will be able to access the PPTs that you have seen here. And I hope you found the event insightful and you learned a lot. I certainly did. So thank you so much, especially to the moderators and also for the participants. And then I think on my screen, you actually can fill out, the session evaluation. So please, I would like to encourage you to do so. Okay. It seems most people have liked it, as Justina is sharing. Thank you
very much.